of a grab bag of short, snappy, and surprising, then Flash is a very rewarding choice.
Great, thank you. Yeah. What I didn't say in the beginning of this is that we are available at www.wakefieldlibrary.org, and you can find any of the lists that we've been talking about there. There's also a wonderful display set up right now with the lists, and you can always get the lists on our website after that is over. So we invite you all to come down to do that. But before we sign off, I want to quickly go around the room, and the chairs, and just talk a little bit really quickly about your list and maybe one of the books that you didn't have a chance to talk about. Karen.
Mine that I'd like to talk about is called The Attack. I believe the author is Duvalier, but I might be getting that wrong. And it's a very hard-hitting account of a Palestinian doctor living in Israel who finds out that his wife may be the suicide bomber in an attack that has just happened. And it's his desperate search for the truth. And it's very enlightening on the whole Palestinian-Israeli situation, and it's obviously quite graphic as well, but a really beautifully done, hard-hitting piece of work.
Good, thank you. Beth.
I'd like to mention Charles Foster's Being a Beast, which I mentioned earlier. It's a little bit like Goatman in that he's trying to be for animals. And one of the ones he chooses is a badger. So he snuffles out a den for himself, and he goes in with his 8-year-old son, and then he's snuffling to get food, grubs in the ground.
They're blindfolded, right?
Yeah, they are at certain points. Yeah.
My father never wanted to do that.
Well, he's a little different than Goatman in that he does try a grub, but he gets food from a farmer that's near the badger's den. But he's also different in that he goes off in flights of fantasy and philosophy. So it's a very different field, but also kind of fascinating.
Fascinating is one word for that. Jackie.
I would point out one from my list called Modern Romance by Aziz Ansari. He's, you might know him, he's a comedian. He was on Parks and Recreation, on the show for a long time. He's very funny, and it's a surprisingly well-researched book. While it's humorous and light, he actually worked with a sociologist to compile all of this data about how people find love and how it's changed over the years, how people date now, and how the dynamic has shifted, and how technology plays into it. It's fascinating. I'm not that, he's about my age, and I'm not that far out of the game. I've not been married that long, but it's even in that short time, it's completely changed, and how it's changed since the 50s, and how he delves in a little bit to arranged marriage and things like that. It's really interesting. It's a great listen. Also, he reads it himself, and because he's a comedian, he does it really well. He ad-libs a little bit on the audio, so. Well worth the listen or the read. No.
I actually listened to that as a palate cleanser between some serious books I had to read for book discussions, and I laughed so hard, but I also learned things I never wanted to know. Yep. And hope I never need to use. So anyway, that was very interesting, though. Yeah, it was very funny, and he does a great job on it. Jeff.
Actually, I'm going to talk about one that Beth mentioned earlier, The Phantom Toll Booth.
Oh, right.
It's a little different from some of the other ones on my list, but I love it because it's so quirky and so different. It's about Milo as another little kid who he gets a mysterious toll booth that appears as a gift, and he drives through it in his little toy car and ends up in a fantasy world. It's not really a fantasy in the traditional sense. It's actually a book all about wordplay, and so I think people who enjoy word games, puzzles, that kind of thing, it takes a very literal look at different examples of the way we talk about words, and it's unique, it's hard to describe, but it's a lot of fun.
Oh, good. As everybody here is bored to tears knowing, I developed 2 lists at the end of the year. One is on adrenaline, which is mysteries and thrillers and suspense. And one of the books on that list was a sleeper, and I call it a sleeper because I don't know why I didn't hear about it. It came out in like 2011, and I have this fascination, as you also know, with assassins. And the book is called The Assassin by Tom Wood, and it was a great series. If you want the action-packed stuff that Lee Child, writes, which is just unbelievable pace and a lot of action. And what I liked about Wood's style is that he does give his assassin a conscience, and sometimes these books don't do that. So I thought it was very well done. And I've only read the first one in the series, but I, of course, have the rest of them on my to-do list when I ever have leisure time again. So that was one of the books that surprised me. The other book on...
So is that sort of like Dexter?
No, because Dexter, you mean the Lindsay book? No. Dexter has a lot of pace to it that is very, very similar, but you don't get the kind of gore that you get in Dexter, even though he's an assassin. It's not the same thing. The other book I wanted to mention was a fantasy, and it's by Genevieve Cogman, and it's called The Invisible Library. And as a librarian, I loved it, because it's about this woman who is a librarian, and she jumps in time, and she has to retrieve these wonderful objects out there that are books or parchments or something, and there's always a reason for it. And because she jumps in time, she's back, in Shakespearean England, and she's here and there all over the place. And of course, there are other rogue librarians who are after her. It was a wonderful, wonderful hoot. It was a lot of fun. It was great fantasy, great world building, terrific characters. And her apprentice in this particular adventure, and I believe it goes on for the rest of the series. I haven't had a chance to get to those either. The second one is called The Masked City. He is a dragon. And it's very interesting how
Can he read?
Cogman, he does many things. Cogman has a great way of explaining this character and giving it real wings, if I may say so. So anyway, those were some wonderful things on my list. The other thing I just want to quickly say is that my favorite book last year was Anthony Doerr's All the Light You Cannot See. There is a reason why everybody is talking about this book. It is stunning, and if you haven't read it, I really encourage you to pick it up. It makes a great book discussion book.
It's still on the bestseller list.
Yeah,
It's still
I
on
would
the
definitely
bestseller list.
second that
I
recommendation.
totally agree.
Exactly.
I can see why.
Third.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for joining me today, and thank you for viewing us, and we look forward to seeing you at the library. Remember, if you want a personal suggestion list of your favorite, of your next reads, come to us with what you've read before, what you're looking for now, and we will try to match you with that next great book. So thank you very much.